Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to this absolutely gorgeous facility. We want to especially thank Mid-State Technical College for hosting this nice event. Let's give the sheriff maybe his thank you for the sunshine this morning, Sheriff Becker. We'll give you credit for that. I don't, who are you going to give it credit to? It's just gorgeous here. But again, my name is Krug. It's honored to be here working with the Heart of Wisconsin Chamber for our annual spring legislative breakfast, almost said fall, spring legislative breakfast. We could not be here today without the support of some very special companies and people. That would be Domtar, Enbridge, MSTC, and also Ocean Spray. So let's give them all a round of applause, and we thank them very much. And to honor America, if you could stand if you're able, let's please recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'd also especially like to thank all the folks behind the scene that are helping, especially the crew here at MSTC for setting up anything, even the luncheon. We thank you. The caterers, great food this morning. Just even those that brought in the tables and set up the mics, we thank you. Again, we can't do it. I know it's a team effort here, and we appreciate that. What we will do this morning is I'm going to ask from the crowd, those of you that are elected officials, those of you that are seeking office, we'll give you 3 to 5 minutes to come up and introduce yourself to the crowd, and also your platform or just things you want to speak about this morning. I will tell you we are, and we thank community media, they are here, so that will be broadcast on the local cable channels in the next upcoming days and weeks. So just so you know that, but I'm going to have, when we get to that point, I'm going to have everybody come up to the platform here, the podium, because we do have the speaker system and it'll be better for both TV and also for everybody to hear. After that, we obviously have two great guests with us that we always give them the special table there. Don't fight now, you guys, come on. We have Senator Patrick Testin. Morning, Senator. And State Representative Scott Krug, who, 2 years ago, I introduced you as a congressman. Yeah. That's, oh well. Just, yeah. So let's get started. And again, throughout the morning, help yourself to food, beverages, etc. We're going to be informal today, but please, glad you're all here. we're going to do this the democratic way. We'll just show of hands. Who would like to start us off? Whether you're in the crowd today as an elected official, a seated elected official, or running for office, I'd love to give you a chance to introduce yourself. So who would like to start us off? All right, come on up. So again, I'll ask you to just come to the podium and we will get started. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Nicholas Wicks. I am running for mayor of Wisconsin Rapids. Sorry, it's usually not nervous, but got some pretty important people here today, and all morning I just was stressing.
Just relax, you'll do just fine.
So, I'm from Wisconsin Rapids. I'm 33. I was born here at Riverview. I went to Mid-State here for urban forestry. Yeah. I'm a veteran, United States Army. I served 4 years in the Army. I joined the Army in 2006. I intended on making a career out of joining the military, but my time in service was cut short. I got hit by a drunk driver, messed up my back, and I tried to persevere, tried to keep going, but unfortunately when it came to the final physical for deployment, they were a little concerned that my back wouldn't hold up to the mountains of Afghanistan, so they kept me home. And then shortly after the unit left, my unit didn't really care for rear detachment very much, so they ended up just medically discharging me. And they at first didn't want to medical discharge me. They were just going to let me ETS because it was close to my regular time to leave. So I got on the phone and called any congressman, senator, representative I could, because I felt that the Army was treating me a little unfairly. And I finally reached out to Herb Cole's office, and within 3 days of talking to someone at Herb Cole's office, I got called into the full bird colonel's office. You know, talk about scared. That guy was not happy that he had to talk to Herb Cole's office. I don't know if Herb Cole himself talked to him, but he was a little upset with me. So he's like, "You think you can clear the Army in X amount of days?" I said, "You set the time and I'm out." And yeah, I was able to get out in time and got all my medical benefits. When I got out of service, I struggled with some depression and some issues, and unfortunately I was one of the veterans that was overprescribed opioids out of the Toma branch. I don't mean to bring too much darkness to our VA system, but I feel that for my platform it's beneficial to talk about my struggles. And I got a good medical care provider at the Wisconsin Rapids Clinic that he reassessed me and was confused that I was in my early 20s and I was taking, extreme narcotics for the pain. And I said, "Well, it hurts." Well, he got me on naproxen and some physical therapy. Took a few years, but I was able to get clean, and now I've been off of narcotics since 2013. And as mayor, I plan on fighting our drug issue. I understand we have a big issue with fentanyl, and I'm proud of the police department, the Wood County sheriffs, and the local police on their job that they're doing. But as mayor, I really want to work with them and try to get a handle on this situation that we have in Wisconsin Rapids. If anybody has any questions or anything for me, I'm more than happy to answer any questions, or I could just pass the.
Yeah, well, what we'll do is we'll give everybody a chance. And
Okay.
Just wanted to at least give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're fine with talking to folks
Yep.
one-on-one too.
Yeah, I mean, I could stay up here for 2 hours and tell my whole life, but I figured one issue was an important one, and that'll help with my campaign. So thank you for your guys' time, and thank you for the lunch.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Who would like to go? Yep, come on up.
Hello, my name is Mark Newman, and I'm in the Democratic primary for the 3rd District congressional race. I was kind of holding back, Craig, because I was like, well, I feel like I'm a little bit of a foreigner here coming from La Crosse, and I wanted to let the local people sort of set the tone. But anyway, thank you so much for letting me speak today. People ask, how's the campaign going? I think a campaign is good work. And what I mean by that is the work of doing a campaign is to prepare the voters to be able to vote with confidence. When I vote, there's 2 things I want to know. I want to know something about the character who's running and offering to be my representative or my elected official serving in government. I want to know, essentially, do I feel I can trust the person? And then the other thing that's important to me when I want to vote is, well, what are the issues that this person is bringing up, thinking about, proposing for the good of my community? So that's my work. I think it's the work of all candidates, and the candidates in our congressional race this year, there's 5 of us, and I've been reaching out to all of them, and I feel like we are colleagues in this work of preparing the voters come August 9th, to be able to cast their vote with confidence and surety that they are able to make a good choice. So a little bit about myself. I'm a retired physician. I retired in 2019 after 35 years of practicing medicine. And I served most recently at Gunderson Lutheran Hospital in the pediatric critical care unit. And that's important because I think that's what I bring particularly to this political arena. I'm currently serving as a council member with the La Crosse Common Council, and I've done multiple political actions and engagements over the last few years since retiring. But right now, I think about what it was as a physician when I would go into a room and I would have one of my patients very ill, possibly injured, and surrounded by a family of very worried people. And also the care providers all focusing on the good of this young child, our patient. That experience was particular to me because there was a level of trust that happened in that room that underlied our humanity in a way that all of the things that make us distinctive were not causing us to be separate. We all have different color eyes, different color skin, different traditions. We have different languages, and I would meet all of that in my intensive care unit. But what was real at that moment was that trust. When I first went into medicine, I thought it's going to be a great career because I can study science, which I've always loved as a young child, and I can use that science for the benefit of people, my neighbors. And what I learned over the years was the science was hard because it kept changing and growing, and I was continuously learning, and so it's always like, how do I keep up with science? And when I thought I was going to help people, a lot of times my efforts to help were misunderstood or different than what the person really wanted. That's the reality that we all live in. But what I found in the course of my career was that there was something way more important that I didn't know when I started out. And that's what I would teach medical students when I had the occasion to teach. That yes, we have to know all the physiology, we have to know all the pharmacology, we have to know all the pathology. That's our job. We have to work hard to continuously do these things. But that's not why we're here. We're here because there is a precious pearl that we have to protect. And that is that trust relationship, what we call the doctor-patient relationship. When somebody, a patient, another human being comes to me and can tell me something that maybe that person would not tell anybody else. I've had that experience both ways, talking to my physician or having people over and over, hundreds of times, having that confidence in me as their doctor to say things. And I would tell the medical students, that is what this is about. That's what our work is about, that trust. Because that's what makes it worthwhile. And we keep at it, we keep working, we have to do our tasks, but we're always looking for that precious moment. So that trust experience is what I offer as a political candidate. Because I think right now, as in every age, we have big problems in our society together. And some of us approach problems one way, and some of us approach problems another way. Just like in that consultation room in my intensive care unit, people had different ways of approaching taking care of that young child. But we all were confident in one another in that trust. And that's what I believe I would like to offer, and I do offer when I participate in this work of campaigning. Certainly I have some subjects, and I know, Craig, I got a little bit limited here in time, so I would be happy to go through topics or subjects with anyone in terms of platform. But I wanted to offer today something that I felt was more important than going through those details, and that is the character of this person, Mark Newman, and what he wants to bring in his engagement in our political arena, because we all need to do it for the sake of our communities. And thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for traveling to this part of district.
It's not the first time.
No, I'm sure it hasn't, but others that are either elected officials or are running for office. It's kind of a quiet, oh, come on up. Microphone is yours.
Morning, everybody. My name is Matt Zacker. I'm the alderman of the 3rd District in Wisconsin Rapids. I appreciate being able to be here. I thought I was just going to eat breakfast and sit in the background, but I figured I better get up and give my talking skills a stretch. I just want to say I very much appreciate my time to be able to represent Wisconsin Rapids. I think my philosophies in life are pretty simple. My brother and I and my family have been building businesses for, 20 plus years. And it always came down to ideas. Everybody has ideas. We want to progress forward. We want to create solutions to our issues. What I see is pretty simple. If you don't have the money, you can't do the ideas. You can have all the vision and be able to create those new things, but we need the money to be able to pay for it. Right now in Wisconsin Rapids, everybody I work with is amazing, and they're all wanting the best for the future of our county, of our city, of our state, of our nation. Problem we're facing right now is just money. When I see strength in ideas, I see a pyramid that is right side up with the foundation on the bottom, nice and wide and strong, so that the ideas that come, you have the money to be able to put them forward and make them work together as a team and make them work. Right now, I see us for the most part being an upside down pyramid, and we have the ability to fall because we don't have the strength when it comes to the money that needs to be there. And I know we're all facing that right now. Don't necessarily have the solutions to it. I know what has worked in the past for us in life and business is save more than you spend. And that's kind of a easier thing when it's a smaller group of people. But when you have a city, when you have a county, when you have a state, I think it's a principle that still needs to be the foundation to everything that we do. And I'm going to help do what I can to help our city be able to do that, and hopefully pull as many people as long as possible and build a stronger community for everybody. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Anyone? The podium is all yours.
Good morning. My name is Janelle Tepp, and I currently work at the Wood County Circuit Court office. I've been there for 16 years now, and I will be running for the Clerk of Courts position this fall. I know that a lot of you here have elections in April or August. Mine isn't until November, but I wanted to just come up and show my face and say good morning to everybody so that you get used to seeing me, hopefully. Sean, I get to work with, I have the privilege. Chief, I get to see every once in a while in court, so it's always a privilege, not for me. Always a privilege to be able to come up, meet new people, say hello. Always encourage people to stop by the office if they ever have any questions or would like information in regards to anything. So please stop by if you're ever in the courthouse. I know Bill likes to come by and tell us a joke every once in a while.
Yeah, I've heard those jokes before.
Yeah, well, I asked him this morning, I said, do you guys get together in the afternoon or the morning and tell everybody where you're gonna go so you don't tell the same joke? No, but just wanted to say hello and hope everybody has a great morning. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Who's next? Come on up. Hey, good morning, good to see you.
Good morning, I'm Lance Plymouth. I am the Wood County Board Chairman. I'll be running for my 13th term against unopposed, so I'm hoping that I prevail again. It's always interesting. I guess the one thing I wanted to share is that the problems that we deal with in the county don't end at those municipal boundaries. You know, we deal with, whether it be the legislature, our congressional delegations, other counties, those villages, cities, and towns. And it's always a challenge. These gentlemen to my right, who are both friends of mine, you know, we are an administrative arm of state government. They legislate, and then we provide those programs. And there's a couple of pretty big things facing us right now. The delivery of broadband countywide. We had a lot of places in this county that had no high-speed internet availability. We're in the process of expanding that right now. Public safety is the biggest issue when we survey those people in the county. You say, what's the most important thing to you? And they say public safety. When I walk out my front door, I want to make sure that I'm safe. We have a sheriff right here and a sheriff's department that does a heck of a job. We're in the middle of the biggest investment I've ever seen in this county at one time, and that's a roughly $70 million jail. And people say, well, why do you need that? Well, part of it is obsolescence. We have a jail right now that's anywhere from parts of it 50 to 70 years old. When doors don't open, that becomes a problem. When you have $15 million of maintenance coming up in the next few years, that also becomes problematic. So that's one of the big issues. We also deal with some of the clean water issues that both of these gentlemen have dealt with, it seems like, endlessly for the last, 10 years? Scott, Pat, it's been a long time. That's another one. And then we have, huge solar projects coming into Wood County, which shape the future slightly differently. So I just want to come up here and say I've appreciated the opportunity to work with every one of you. I have a fellow county board supervisor in the room here, Bill Clendenning. I don't know if Bill will come up here because I think he's running for a couple of offices again. But thank you for all the acquaintance, the friendships, and the opportunity to work with you across all those lines. Appreciate it.
That's kind of an interesting way to put it. I'm running against unopposed. Who is this unopposed? But who's next? Anyone else like to share them? Okay. So we will.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yep. Again, our special guests here, Senator Patrick Testin. We'll start on the Senate side this time, and if you want to come up and just kind of share what's going on in your world, and then we'll have Scott come up, and then we will have an opportunity. I have some questions, and then also we'll turn it over to the audience for questions. So, Senator Patrick Testin, and good morning.
Well, good morning. It's great to see everyone. So Senator Patrick Testin represent the 24th Senate District, which encompasses all of Portage County, a good portion of Wood County, and then goes into parts of Adams, Waushara, Jackson, and Monroe County. And so I'm in the middle of my second term and really want to thank many of you in here who have supported me over the years and as partners in both local government as well as county government, law enforcement, the technical college. What I've really enjoyed about this is that we have really been able to come together and address a number of issues. And I think one of the biggest issues that we're trying to tackle right now, both in the legislature as well as the state as a whole, is how do we get to some sense of normalcy again? And when you take a look at what we were able to accomplish in this biennium, the budget that was passed and signed into law by Governor Evers back in end of June of 2021, I think Wisconsin is setting itself up in a very strong position. When you take a look at our fiscal house compared to some of our neighbors to the south and to the west, we are in a much stronger position than they are. And I think it's in large part due to prudent budgeting that we have done to the point where, just a decade ago, our state was facing a $3.6 billion structural deficit to the point now we're facing a record surplus. We have over $1 billion in our rainy day fund. We've been able to make significant investments in areas like K-12 education, infrastructure, our healthcare delivery systems. And so it's through those conservative reforms that we've enacted that I think have really set us up to hopefully, provided the economy doesn't nosedive here in the near future, set us up for what I think next biennium could be a historic moment for Wisconsin as it relates to tax reform. There's been a lot of discussion in recent weeks of what the future could look like here in the state. And when we take a look at ways and how we can attract talent, not just retain our workforce, but attract a workforce from outside of the state, I think conversations such as the elimination of the income tax would be a great start. Because when you take a look at the states such as Florida, Tennessee, Texas, they saw the largest growth in the data from the last census. And I think this could be our opportunity to set the beacon up that Wisconsin could be next and really set in motion historic reforms for the state. As my role right now in the state Senate as the Health Committee Chair, we have put a lot of emphasis on trying to find ways to increase access and expansion to healthcare services, especially in underserved areas. And I know this is one of the questions, so I won't tee it up just yet. But it's been really enjoyable, and I do want to thank Midstate in particular for all the work that they are doing to help create those pipelines to get our frontline medical professionals the resources and training that they need to go out there and deliver high-quality care here in the state of Wisconsin, particularly right here in central Wisconsin. Other than that, we just wrapped up our session this Tuesday. I don't believe the assembly's coming back. I hope. So right now, obviously with divided government, it's been a little bit of a struggle because there are a lot of things we would like to get done. There are some things that we had sent to the governor that unfortunately had been vetoed, which we can probably talk a little bit more about later. But really right now, it's just trying to keep things kind of status quo, and we'll see how things play out this November. But I do think Wisconsin's in a very strong position moving forward, and I hope we can continue to keep moving the state in the right direction. So with that, I will turn it over to Representative Krug.
Morning. Just off the bat, I wanted to thank Midstate for this facility. This is, when I went to school here, I was joking around with a few people this morning. When I went to school here, it looked a heck of a lot different. So over the years, the emphasis in bringing people together, giving them community space, I mean, it's something we've worked on legislatively within different agencies, trying to all come together out of our silos, and I think Midstate's doing a great job bringing that all together, so thank you for that to start. I am in my 6th term now in the State Assembly. Of course, November coming up, going for another one. My district encompasses Southern Portage County. I've got a little bit of Southern Portage, Almond and Bancroft, a little bit of Grant, Wisconsin Rapids area here in Wood County, Northern Adams County down to Friendship, and then Western Washare all the way through Watoma past the Silvercrest is about where it ends when you get up to Red Granite and Wild Rose out that way. So it's a pretty expansive area. Nowhere near as big of a Senate district and nowhere near as big of a congressional district, which is nice because I like to focus on local issues, local problems, trying to find a way to usher our local needs through the state legislature has always been my wheelhouse. I think I've worked really well in that area and trying to make sure we've got clean water, making sure Lake Petenwell is nice and clean, that we don't have to walk across Lake Petenwell and we can actually use our boats and swim, and making sure that we've got local dollars for education and that we've got good facilities for folks to be able to go to those educational programs, whether it's Midstate, Lincoln High School, and the such. I live out in Rome, so I'm in the Nakusa School District, which is an interesting aspect of my career is I actually have a Nakusa address, but I represent none of Nakusa. So figure that one out and we'll figure out how those maps work pretty soon again. My biggest area of work right now is in the public benefit reform arena, so I'm the chairman of the Public Benefit Reform Committee. We work on food share, W-2, housing benefits, any public benefit that anybody in the state of Wisconsin receives, my committee has oversight on. The biggest thing we worked on this session, that we'll continue to work on into next session, is our benefit cliff legislation. I think it's one of the most powerful things we can do to get our workforce reinvigorated in the state of Wisconsin is by saying if you receive a certain amount of benefit and you're offered more employment, you should not have to bat an eye at taking those extra employment benefit or those extra employment opportunities at the risk of your benefit. So for example, if you're working 20 hours a week for $10 an hour at Walmart, somebody says, hey, we can get you up to 30, 35 hours, $15 an hour. You balance those benefit payments out. And for some people, it's actually more beneficial to stay in the program than it is to go to work those extra hours for those extra pay increases. That's something that's inherently wrong with our system right now in the state of Wisconsin. We're not the only state that has that problem. It's a nationwide problem. But that's something that we've started to tackle on a bipartisan basis this session. with public hearings in the Senate and the Assembly this session on our public benefit reform package. I think we can get that across the finish line next session, so I'm hopeful. Nothing ever gets done the first session in Madison. I learned that my first 2 years, so we'll keep working on those issues. Besides that, obviously, we're going to talk a lot more about it as we go through the program today, but the Wisconsin Rapids paper mill is always top of our list. Every aspect of it, top to bottom, inside out, finding new buyers, finding new production items, finding ways to make that an opportunity for people to walk through those doors for employment again. So those are some things that I like to work on a regular daily basis. I try to stay out of the headier, bigger fights in Madison and try to get done some local things that help people here in Wisconsin Rapids. So we'll take the questions as we go through the program. Just wanted to thank everybody again for being here today and to have some good questions. We're always excited to be on the hot seat. So thanks again.
Thank you. There was quite a group from central Wisconsin that invaded Madison for a night and a full day, Central Wisconsin Days. And every year we look at issues that affect this region. And one of the top ones this year was just which you're all facing, workforce development, getting people literally and having enough to run your businesses. So Senator, let's anything that you'd like to share on things that you're doing on the Senate side to help that worker shortage. Thank you.
So as it relates to our workforce shortages, this is probably the #1 issue facing employers in the state of Wisconsin. So WMC, Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, recently released a survey to employers, and the data that came back, 70% of employers here in the state of Wisconsin cited workforce issues as their #1 concern. So good news and bad news, Craig. So when you guys came down for Central Wisconsin Days, you cited workforce as your #1 issue. As other regions have come down to the state of Wisconsin, the lobbyists for their lobby days, they've all cited workforce as their #1 issue. And this goes back to some of the things that we did this session, even going back in July of 2021, when we sent the governor a bill to end the extra $300 a week in UI benefits. Because we heard from many of our employers right here in this district and around the state that they could expand, they can grow, extend their operations, grow our economy. But unfortunately, because of some of the benefits that have been active in response to the pandemic, it's enticed people not to work. And so based on the feedback that we heard, we sent legislation to end the extra $300 a week because it was time to get people off of the sidelines and back into the workforce. Unfortunately, when the bill reached the governor's desk, that was one of the ones that got vetoed. And the reason for it was, in my opinion, lackluster, because when the governor was asked as to why he vetoed the bill, he said there was no data to suggest that extra money was keeping people from entering the workforce. Now, you talk to any employer, they will tell you the exact opposite, is that we are trying to get people back, but they're saying we're going to wait this out, we're getting extra benefits, so we're just going to hold off for now. As Representative Krug mentioned, one of the things that we passed recently was a series of bills to entice individuals. We're trying the carrot and stick approach. We tried the carrot. For some people it worked, for many it did not. Now it's using the stick approach to give them a gentle nudge to get them gainfully employed again. One of the bills was a bill that I had authored that would basically require DHS to follow existing law. So for the last 2 years, the state of Wisconsin has used a waiver from the feds to waive any work search requirements and drug testing requirements for individuals who are on food share. So the bill that we had drafted would essentially require individuals that if you are able-bodied and you have zero dependents, and you're on food share, that you have to actively look for work and you have to pass a drug test. Unfortunately, in the debate that transpired on the state Senate, you would have thought that we were bashing poor individuals, that we are cold and heartless, and that's simply not the case. From my perspective, as well as Representative Krug's and many of us in the legislature, is that we should gauge the success of our government welfare programs not by how many more individuals that we can get enrolled onto those programs, but by how many we can get off of those programs, because it means they have gainful employment and they can be self-sufficient. That is our ultimate goal right here, because there is so much opportunity out there in every single corner of the state. As I'm going around the entire state of Wisconsin these days, is that you can find businesses that are hiring entry-level workers at $15, $16, $17 an hour. I don't know of any employer who is paying someone a minimum wage at this time. And if you're a skilled worker, I mean, we have so many manufacturing jobs available right here within a 50-mile radius of the greater Wisconsin Rapids area. In fact, it's one of the primary reasons why, since I've been in office, we have gone out and done our On the Job series where we highlight a different business here in the district for an entire day, where I go work a different job for an entire day. So we can show that there is dignity in work. And so that's going to continue to be a point of emphasis. And I'm glad Representative Krug touched on it, the fiscal cliff, trying to eliminate that, because it is, you cannot fault someone who turns down a pay increase or more hours in work if it means they are going to lose all of their support. Because it's very hard to justify taking one step forward if it means that you're taking 3 steps backwards. And so I do firmly believe as we move forward and we continue to have conversations on how we can adjust our benefits, is that it is the safety net. We're here to help give individuals a hand up when they fall in hard times. But when that safety net becomes a hammock, that's problematic, because we cannot afford, especially when we take a look at our demographic challenges right now here in the state, our population that's 65 or older, the number of baby boomers that are set to leave the workforce over the next several years are set to increase by about 75% by the year 2034. So if we're not being more proactive to train up our workforce right here in the state of Wisconsin and retain our workforce here in the state of Wisconsin, and then on top of that go out and attract a workforce from outside of the state, we are going to be in very dire need in the near future. So that's why I think it's so critical that we make the changes that we need to make here in-house, but then also have serious conversations about big ticket items like tax reform that will entice individuals to come to Wisconsin, set up shop, and help grow our communities right here in central Wisconsin and throughout the entire state.
Thank you, Senator, and I can attest, he spent 8 solid hours at Domtar Nakusa Paper Mill, and he actually made paper. He was an excellent employee. We let him go after 8 hours, but you know, things happen. But we were glad to have, that was a great conversation. One of his staffers called and said, he wants to come work for a day. I'm like, he's what? But that was great having you. Scott, Mr. Krug, Scott's fine, we've known each other forever. Do you still hear anything about election integrity or can you share a little bit? Is it obviously it started kind of in 2020. Are you still hearing that?
Oh, yeah. It's, wherever you land on the spectrum on elections, I mean, it is still something that's talked about on a daily basis. It is probably the number 1 or number 2 item that comes up in constituent emails and phone calls yet. And I think one of the things that we've never shied away from in the state assembly or the state senate, for that matter, since I've been there, is always making sure that we can do better in our election system. There are always tweaks, there are always reforms, there are always things we find that did not work the time before that we need to improve for the next time. Having said that, that's the focus of my legislative efforts in election integrity, is moving forward, not looking back anymore. I don't think we are going to get to the point where we agree entirely on what happened, who said what, who did what on the 2020 election. It is what it is. It's done. It's over. We are dealing with all of the things that come along with elections. Every election has consequences. Whichever side of the political aisle you land on, you'll feel those consequences differently. But 2020 is over. So we're looking forward to different things we can do for the 2022 election, 24 election and beyond, making sure that we all understand the rules of the game. Making sure that there's accountability and oversight, making sure that, for example, the Wisconsin Elections Commission follows the law, to not change the law in their eyes without necessarily coming to the legislature before changing law. So there are things that you'll hear circling through courts, you'll hear things circling through talk radio and other sources. There's no going back on previous elections. So the folks that you may hear that bring that up and say, well, we got to go back and overturn, it's just not going to happen. It's not a realistic thing. But moving forward, we do have to make sure that whether people accept 2020 or not, that they're willing and able to go vote in 2022, 2024, and beyond. So legislatively, we did pass a series of bills this session. Most of them will end up on the governor's desk. Some of them we did not get across the finish line. But the governor will have a chance to make those decisions on how we're going to maintain our election system and bring back the integrity that some people feel has been lost, whether that's trying to find ways to balance the absentee balloting, whether it's drop boxes or ballot harvesting, all of the catchphrases that you hear. I think legislatively, we struck a really good tone on dealing with those issues without trying to be reactionary in government, which is one of the things that I've always looked to make sure that we don't end up doing in state government is become reactionary. So, as those questions percolate and people hear them, don't fall for the hype that the 2020 election is still up for debate. It's over. Let's move on to 2022 and beyond. So thank you.
Senator Testin, you did mention access to health care. I'd like to, if you would update us on what's going on in the healthcare world right now.
So yeah, we are very fortunate here in the state of Wisconsin that we have one of the best healthcare delivery systems in the entire country. We are #1 in the Midwest, #4 in the nation. And so it's a true testament to the partnerships that have been developed between our providers, between our frontline medical workers, our very healthy and vibrant health insurance marketplace that we have here in the state. But as always, there's always room for improvements. And one of the things that I'm very proud of that we were able to get done and pass out of both houses is a bill that's been around for roughly eight years now that was championed by Senator Devin Lemieux, but when he became Senate Majority Leader, asked me to spearhead, and that's a bill dealing with advanced practice nurses, allowing them to operate at the highest level of their licensure. Wisconsin's limited, which is unfortunate, because 23 other states allow these advanced practice nurses to operate at the highest level of their scope and their licensure. And so we had introduced a bill that would allow them those flexibilities, not allow them to completely practice independently or trying to phase out the role of physicians that they have in the healthcare delivery team. But there was a lot of pushback. We worked with stakeholders who were both for and against the bill throughout the course of this session. And, a lot of negotiations and a lot of good discussions. And we finally got the bill to a point where we were able to get it out of the Senate. It then went over to the Assembly where they made some tweaks and it came back and we voted it out of committee or out of the Senate on Tuesday. And so now we'll see what the governor does with it. But essentially what the bill does is allow for these individuals who have the highest level of training after 2 years if they want to go into independent practice where they don't have to do what's called a collaborative agreement with a physician that they may have never met or may be hundreds of miles away in a different community. But I think the biggest thing about this legislation, for the first time in state statute, that we have codified that when a healthcare professional encounters something that goes beyond their scope, they have to refer it to the next level up, like a physician, which we have always operated under the impression that medical professionals, that when they come across something that goes beyond their scope, beyond their capabilities, that they would do that automatically. So we put in place this guardrail, which I think is a great step. And furthermore, we have proven that going back to the pandemic, when we gave a lot of our healthcare workers some flexibility and a little bit more nimble, to be a little bit more nimble as it relates to our state regulations to address the pandemic and have those flexibilities so they can help patients. And what we saw, and I think this was one of the biggest silver linings, is that we can roll back some regulations and the sky does not fall. We should be empowering our medical professionals at every single level, from physicians all the way down to CNAs, to do the best that they can at the highest level of their license. And on top of that, some of the other areas that we're looking to continue to work on and address, things like the shortage of oral health care in the state. Over half of Wisconsin counties are considered dental deserts. So we have been working with the Marquette School of Dentistry for the last 4 years on trying to create a rural dentistry scholarship program to entice dental students to go into underserved areas. It's not that we have a shortage of dentists in the state of Wisconsin. It's just where they're located. Many of them are clustered in some of our more urban centers, and in places like here, just to the south of us in Adams County, you've got one. In some counties up north, you've got none. And when the #1 reason why kids miss school is because of toothaches, that's problematic. And so we're trying to, again, entice individuals to practice in underserved areas. So the goal is that eventually they'll have the ability to have some of their loans forgiven. And hopefully they'll set up shop and develop long-standing practices. The other big issue that we're dealing with right now is continue to battle the methamphetamine and opioid epidemic that continues to run rampant throughout not just the state but around the country. Wisconsin has been a leader on this issue, going back to Representative John Nygren, who whose daughter dealt with addiction. In fact, she was just a year below me in high school back home in Marinette. And to see what happened to individuals like that, just basically their lives destroyed because of the opioid crisis. So Wisconsin has been a leader through the HOPE agenda, making sure that we're cutting down on the number of opioids that get prescribed by medical professionals, providing more treatment, more avenues and treatment and diversion courts. But one of the things that we recently passed, and I suspect will get signed into law, is to create a database over at the Department of Administration to take a look at all the various programs at DHS, within our Department of Corrections, within DOA, to take a look at just how impactful and effective all these different programs have been. So that way we can really dial in to see, all right, this program works, this one needs to be tweaked, or this one's doing great. So that way, instead of adding more layers upon layers of programs, that we're really trying to hammer and hone in on what's working the best so we can make more targeted critical investments on this issue. Lastly, as it relates to healthcare, one of the things that we found out is that obviously we have a physician shortage. We also have a nursing shortage here in the state of Wisconsin. And what we found out in some of our UW campuses is that they will have wait lists. And these students who want to go into a nursing program, but there's wait lists, they don't keep track of these students. So we are losing out on this potential investment. So one of the things that we're trying to do currently right now is work with the UW system to create a program that basically will monitor these students if there is a wait list, so when things open up, they can get in contact with these individuals to hopefully get them into this nursing program, or find a different program, whether it's a CNA, just to try and keep them engaged and interested in the healthcare field. Because if we've got students, whether they're living in the La Crosse area, and they want to go to the La Crosse nursing program, but they can't because there's a wait list, then they go to Minnesota or they go over into Iowa, we've just lost out on that investment. So we're hoping to address some of these issues so we can reduce the bottleneck as it relates to some of these healthcare professionals and their programs within the UW system. And so I'm hopeful we'll be able to get that done hopefully in the next biennium.
And this would be for both of you, but maybe we'll start with Representative Krug, an update on the Verso paper mill here in Rapids.
You know, sometimes they say no news is good news, but right now no news is not good news. So where we're at right now is, of course, Billerud Coarseness has come through and purchased the Rapids mill as part of a package deal. They got Quinnipiac and Escanaba, and Rapids came along as kind of a tertiary piece of that component. Billerud has, from that point, said we don't have any intentions of running anything out of the Rapids mill right now. Originally, they had said that they felt that the pulp that they could produce in Escanaba or Quinnipiac, one of the two, back and forth, that the pulp they would produce in one would feed the other mill, and there would be a closed-end loop. Transportation costs be less. Things like that. So rumbling since then is that Billerud might look to do some pulping in Wisconsin Rapids at some point. They don't know if their projections are going to hold true, that they can do all of that in the closed loop program that they had thought they had available to them up north. So there's a potential there. I don't see it as a great potential. So our goal again is to make sure that as soon as this deal closes between Verso and Billerud later this month, hopefully, should be the end of this quarter, the end of this month, early April, that Billerud would look to offload that asset to somebody else again. At that point, I think it's still fair game that we have the co-op still interested and available. They are still looking for financial assistance from the state. I still think that's something that should have been signed as a no-brainer bill back in 2021. Unfortunately, is one of those things that ended up on the veto block. So the legislature, you know, obviously now being out of session, being the end of the even year, going into the campaign cycle is going to make it harder for the legislature to react. Now that things have dragged out to this point, so it's tough. I think one of the things that I think we can be most proud of here today, though, is that we were able to diversify our situation in Wisconsin Rapids a lot better than it's been in the past. This could have been a lot more painful than it's been so far. I understand that pain of any kind is not easy when it comes to that, but I think we've got a good employer base that's been able to scoop up a lot of the problems that have been created with the permanent now closure of that mill. So I think As we move into 2023, I'm hopeful that Bill Arun will come back to the table, discuss with us options to sell, work with us that where Versa wouldn't work with us on helping find ways to get a buyer interested and ready to make a purchase. It's still number one priority for Senator Testin and myself. I think it's easy to say that. We're not solely focused on that mill though, as we move forward. We've got very good mills still in the Wisconsin Rapids area when it comes to Barron and Nakusa. That we do have concerns about moving forward. We want to make sure we secure the future of the papermaking industry, not only in central Wisconsin, for the safety and security of the northern part of our state, but to make sure that papermaking is a viable option for the entirety of the state of Wisconsin. So you'll see another legislative package come through when we get back in January. That'll make sure that we can soundly support the papermaking industry statewide. So, thanks. Yeah, absolutely.
So as many of you are aware, there has been a huge influx of federal dollars that has come down from the federal government to the state government from the CARES Act, the American Rescue Plan Act, and much of that money has been given directly to the sole discretion and use for the governor and his administration. The CARES Act, the governor received just shy of about $2 billion to use for rapid response for early on in the pandemic. Yet to date, there's still roughly about $85 million that has yet to be allocated. And as it relates to the American Rescue Plan Act, there's still roughly around $1 billion that has yet to be allocated. So as Representative Krug touched on, last year through the Rapids Together Task Force, after the first guidelines and recommendations came down from the American Rescue Plan Act, while it didn't say specifically you can use this money to provide a loan for an individual to purchase the mills in Wisconsin Rapids and Park Falls, but there was still pretty broad latitude that it was pretty clear that if you can show that because of the mills closures were impacted because of the pandemic or government's response to the pandemic, that it would be allowed. So that's when we came up with the bill to provide a loan upwards of $50 million for the Wisconsin Rapids mill, $15 million for the Park Falls mill, and we would use the American Rescue Plan dollars. Unfortunately, some of our colleagues in the Assembly and Senate wanted to use general purpose revenue, but the trick with that is it would have killed the bill because as part of the requirements that came in from the American Rescue Plan Act, Congress created what was called the maintenance of effort. So for every $1 that a state spends in new money, they then have to invest another additional 80 cents on that dollar into K-12 education. The reason why Congress did this is that they thought that for a lot of states, with the economic downturn, concerns that there weren't going to be significant revenues coming in because of the economic downturn, that they would slash education budgets. Thankfully, here in the state of Wisconsin, that didn't happen, which is why we continued to move forward using the American Rescue Plan dollars. So when the bill hit the governor's desk, one of the reasons why he vetoed it, he cited that it was an inappropriate use of federal dollars. But here's the good news. It's not good news for Wisconsin Rapids, but for Park Falls, even though their mill is closed and many of the machines that were in that mill have been auctioned off, the governor did give the city of Park Falls a grant of $5.5 million to open up a YMCA. So while they won't have a wealth-generating mill in that town anymore, they'll at least have the ability to go get a nice workout in at the YMCA. But this is what's so frustrating, is that the governor vetoed our bill saying that was an inappropriate use of ARPA funds, but yet was willing to provide a grant, money that will never get paid back or returned to the state of Wisconsin, or the federal government for that matter, for a new Y. We have hundreds of workers up in that area of that state who are out of work. A mill that for generations provided wealth for that area. We have loggers that are still impacted by the closure of this mill. So I seriously have to question and ask, how serious is this administration on actually addressing the problem? I mean, it dates back to when we had a conversation with the governor here at Midstate, when he flat out said, if you guys come up with an idea in a bill and you get it to me, I will sign it into law. He said that on the phone to myself, Representative Krug, and others who were on the line as well. We did just that. It got vetoed. And as a result, there's a lot of question marks that remain for this mill here in Wisconsin Rapids. It's unfortunate that the mill up in Park Falls will probably never reopen. But as Representative Krug alluded to, we remain committed to making sure that we're exploring every option available to us to ensure that that mill is not a thing of the past.
While you're there, Senator, you mentioned about clean water. Do you want to give an update on some issues about clean water and kind of what's going on in the state for that?
Yeah, so we continue to work on issues as it relates to water quality, water quantity, not just here in the Central Sands, but throughout the state of Wisconsin. So as many of you are aware, back in 2019, when Governor Evers gave his State of the State address, he stated that 2019 was going to be the year of clean drinking water. Shortly after that, Speaker Voss announced that he was going to create a Speaker's Task Force on water quality. And typically when these task forces get formed, it is just the State Assembly that's involved. But I made a personal ask to the Speaker to say, please include the State Senate so we can work on this in a bicameral fashion. We went around the state of Wisconsin on 13 different stops in every corner of the state to discuss things like PFAS, nitrates, water tables, algae levels, I mean, you name it. We really dove in deep on this issue, and we found a lot of common themes, which is both good and bad. Good in the sense that the awareness level has been risen quite a bit, because I know in conversations when Representative Krug first started working on these issues when he got elected, talking to some of our colleagues, when you talk water quality issues, they would glaze over. But now legislators even in southeast Wisconsin, northeast, southwest, they're all paying attention. And so through that, we came up with about a baker's dozen worth of bills dealing with a whole host of issues, providing homeowners some much needed relief if they have a contaminated well, encouraging farmers to use cover crops and best practices. I mean, really doing what we can to make critical investments on this issue. The Assembly passed all 13 bills. They then came to the Senate, and we were cut short because of the pandemic, weren't able to pass them. But many of these bills have come back. A number of them were signed into law in the budget that the governor signed last year. And then more recently, we just had a number of bills move out of both houses and are awaiting his signature. One would provide homeowners, if they have a failing septic system, to receive some grant dollars from the state to repair that. We have about, what is it, 20 or 25% of all septic systems in the state are failing right now. And so we want to be able to make sure that they have resources to replace those, because they are not cheap systems to replace. Another bill that we had authored that is making its way to the governor would be dealing with the nitrate optimization program. So that way we're helping farmers with cover crops, making sure that they're cutting down on the runoff that then eventually goes into the Wisconsin River, and where we've seen issues of blue-green algae blooms in the summers in Lake Peatwell and Castle Rock. We continue to push for the producer-led watershed programs, grant programs, and we've got a couple right here in central Wisconsin that have really paved the way. The farmers of Mill Creek watershed, we got the Tomorrow River, and these have been great because you have actually seen partnerships where conservation groups as well as farmers have come together to really work in unison. And as opposed to what we had even just a few years ago, when our ag groups and our conservation groups, they couldn't talk to one another. They were talking past each other. And we're at a point now where they found that common ground. And a prime example is the partnership that was created with the Little Plover River, the Village of Plover, the state of Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Potato and Vegetable Growers Association, where on the Little Plover River, which has been one of the most endangered water bodies in all of North America, they're working to restore that. They took a couple high-capacity wells out of commission at the headwaters, and they've been doing restoration work to get it back to its original flow rates. And these are prime examples of how these partnerships can be extremely impactful, not taking a one-size-fits-all approach, but addressing some of these issues watershed by watershed. And a lot of that is a testament and credit to the work that Representative Krug has done over the years, along with State Senator Rob Coles out of the Green Bay Alloway area, that have really pushed this and have moved the needle and shown that we can strike that compromise and find that common ground to ensure that we still have a thriving ag economy right here, but also balance the needs of our natural resources, and ensuring that places like central Wisconsin continue to be a tourism and destination hub.
Mr. Krug, you want to talk about redistricting? No. Well, you were required to as coming today, so.
Yeah.
I know that's a fun topic for you, so.
Well, yeah, it is. It's always, it is obviously the most political thing we'll do every 10 years in the state is the redistricting process. Far be it for me to throw politics into our discussion today, but that's why we're here, I guess. the way the process works is the legislature is tasked in our state constitution with drawing those boundaries every 10 years. The legislature did that this year. The legislature did that back when I was there as well in 2012. Back then, we had a little different story. We had a governor that would sign the maps. This year, we didn't have a governor that would sign the maps. Hence, a good lesson for everybody in the balance of powers within our state government, where there are three branches of government. The legislature and the executive not agreeing, the judiciary decides to step into the fray, and our Supreme Court, which is ever independent, which is a good thing for the most part. We want to make sure that we have an independent judiciary, but the decision last week by the Supreme Court to accept a late draw and submission by the governor, not the maps that the governor proposed to the legislature that even members of his own party voted against, but the courts allowed the governor's administration to draw another set of maps behind the scenes at the last minute that it didn't give the legislature a chance to match. So the governor's third map is now the map that we're currently operating under going forward into the 2022 election. That's kind of just the beginning of the story. There are interested parties from all over the state right now that have taken this case beyond the state Supreme Court to the United States Supreme Court under 14th Amendment protection, equal protection clause issues, where the governor's late submitted map included districts that were created solely based on race, which is obviously not allowed under our U.S. Constitution or our state constitution. So those maps will be adjudicated coming next week before the U.S. Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett is the Supreme Court representative for this district of the country, so she has taken on this case, asked for briefs from both parties to come before the United States Supreme Court on that 14th Amendment issue. So the challenge where that comes in is, what is today, March 10th, 11th, 9th, 9th? March something, mid-March, there we go. Yeah, it all blends in together at the end of a session. We are about 1 month away from the date where all candidates take out nomination papers for the fall election. So when it comes to statewide races, thankfully, Senator Testin doesn't have to deal with this anymore because he's got a statewide race. But some of us who are left behind in those boundaries don't know where the heck our districts are going to be at this point, which is a struggle. For me, I don't think it matters much. My 2002 map, my 2012 map, my 2022 map are almost all basically the same. It doesn't change much. The governor's proposed map for my district actually gave me half of the city of Nakusa, which is odd. I don't know why we split the city of Nakusa with 2,000 people, but it did that. So I have, that part of Nakusa that runs past Urco, kind of goes along that corridor past McDonald's, winds up to the high school. So I get that little portion of Nakusa added to my district for this cycle. Whereas our maps had pushed my district further to the east to include Wild Rose and Red Granite as a whole. So my district could run anywhere from Red Granite, Wild Rose, through Nakusa into Cranmore. Who the heck knows where it's going to be? And that's the problem with when we introduce extra maps at the last minute that the Supreme Court decides to take on as law. So redistricting is never a fun conversation. It'll happen again in 10 years. It'll be the most contentious thing that happens in those 10 years of legislative cycles. Lawsuits from the 2011 redistricting had just basically ended a few years ago, so there were 8-9 years of lawsuits on redistricting. Moving forward, it will always be an issue. There will always be problems with redistricting. There are always going to be questions about a nonpartisan independent source doing the map drawing process. And one thing I've learned in almost 12 years in Madison is that nobody in Madison is nonpartisan, okay? So we got to just get beyond that idea that there's somehow an enclave of people who don't have politics that reside in Madison and work in those offices. So that's redistricting in a nutshell. So if you have any questions about that, we can take those offline and afterwards as well. So thanks for a good one.
Kind of an odd combination, but while you're up there, can you talk about vaccine mandate bill?
Wow, what is up with this guy today? That's right, yeah, right? So yes, vaccine mandate bills, we passed a bunch of those through the legislative process this year too, including mine, which I think was the most reasonable of the bunch that I worked on with Senator Stasholt. Basically, the bill that I wrote on vaccine mandates is that the government cannot discriminate against you based on your vaccine mandate or vaccine status when it comes to receiving governmental services. So you should be able to walk into the Wood County Courthouse, for example, without somebody having to ask you for a vaccine passport. Well, the most benefit, as Lance said before, the county government is a wing of the state government. There's no reason that if you're going to apply for those benefits that the state has put out that the county has to offer to you, that the county should be asking you for a vaccine passport to access the building. It's a little bit different when it comes to security. I can see why you have security at the front of a building, but I don't see why you need to have somebody present you a card to say I'm eligible to come get what the government has provided for me. That's one of the things. There were other vaccine mandate bills that went through the legislative process that were a little more in depth, that would have prevented employers, private employers, from asking your status. I thought that went a little too far. I think if you own a business and you have a private entity, you should be able to decide who comes in and who goes, who you serve, who you don't. Those cases have been through the courts for years on what rights private citizens have, but I don't think in any way, shape, or form our government should interfere with our decisions to get mandated or not and to ask you to have a passport to get the services that we've provided for you. So I think that's about all we've done so far in COVID vaccines and mandates. And got any other tough ones you want me to take? Can you just stay over there?
A good one for
That's it.
Testin.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you.
I'm guessing in your whole career, you never talked about redistricting and vaccines in the same panel here.
Need a drink?
We're just trying to keep you on your toes here.
Anything stronger?
Senator Testin, you talk a lot about education, obviously, and your education pipeline that you do in a lot of your discussions. You want to give us an update and just your thoughts about education and kind of what's going on, especially in the Senate side for education?
Get it, Craig.
So obviously, in this last state budget, we were able to make another round of critical investments into K-12 education, and really it's about making sure that, from my perspective, that we're preparing our future workforce so that when they graduate, and whether they did go on to a 4-year college degree, a 2-year tech college like Mid-State, or directly into the workforce, that they're going to have everything that they need to be successful. But one of the big things that I've really been trying to push is breaking the narrative that you don't necessarily need a 4-year college degree to have a good career. And so no one's from UWSP's here, are they? All right, nothing against UWSP. They're a great school. We've got great UW systems. I know, I'm an alum. But that's one of the primary reasons why I go out and do the on-the-job series. And anytime I'm having conversations with kids in high school, middle school, and asking them, hey, what do you want to do? A prime example, I was just at SPASH back in December because I did one of my on-the-jobs with Simplicity Credit Union in their branch in there, and got the chance to go in front of a bunch of the students in the financial literacy course. And it was great for me because I wish I would have had a course like that when I was in high school, because when I was growing up, my parents made about every boneheaded financial decision that you could think of. And as a result, that got transferred over to me, and I made just about every dumb financial decision you could think of when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, and we figured it out after that. But making sure that our students actually have real world experience that they can apply and then take that from the classroom into the real world. I think one of the biggest things that we really need to address is what can we do to expand the youth apprenticeship program here in the state of Wisconsin. We have been a leader on this front going back to the early 90s, where we've got about 13 different job clusters where students can go do a youth apprenticeship. A prime example, last month when I did my on-the-job series at Point Precision, I got to work alongside one of the first youth apprenticeships here in the state, who went to Mid-State, graduated, went to Mid-State, and then went to Point Precision. And he's been with Point Precision for almost 20 plus years. And it's those types of stories that really highlight the actual worth of these programs, that it allows employers to actually have an investment in that student. And so one of the things that we're really trying to take a look at moving forward is increase in awareness of the youth apprenticeship program. A lot of our school districts, I know Rapids does a very good job of highlighting what's out there, but there are a lot of districts out there that don't. And so one of the bills that we had signed, or not that I didn't sign, but that we got passed, and was signed into law, was just making sure that parents and students are aware of all these different programs that are available. I think that's one of the biggest points of frustration with a lot of programs and with government in general, is that we create programs and they operate in silos, and unless you know specifically about that program, you may never have heard about it. So increasing awareness of these, and also making sure that they can transfer and actually get credit for the work that they do. Because that's the other big component is when they graduate, and if they do go on to a 4-year or 2-year college degree, is that we have got to get them through the door quicker and into the job market sooner with less debt. I mean, when you get the fact that student loan debt now surpasses credit card debt here in this country, that's scary, and that's going to be a big problem down the road. So again, trying to alleviate those bottlenecks, making sure that we're providing choices for parents to make sure that they can find an education system that works best for their sons and daughters. And thankfully, we've got a great system right here. And Craig, you've done a phenomenal job navigating this through the last 2 years. I know it has not been easy, but you know, the Rapid School District is a prime example where they went out and worked with the community, worked with the county government, working with the state to ensure that kids had in-person instruction. And obviously they had to make changes and be flexible, just like many districts, but I really want to give you a round of applause on that, Craig, for your leadership. So there's still plenty of work that needs to be done, but you know, one thing that I'm encouraged by is just the amount of feedback that we've gotten as it relates to the work on youth apprenticeship, tools of the trade. I think it's a huge need, and to see the buy-in with the business community, working with our education partners, working with our tech colleges, that's one thing that's really has always impressed me about this area in particular is that we're not competitors with one another. We're a team, and everyone's been rowing in the same direction for the last several years, and I hope that continues to be the case moving forward.
And a personal note on what he just talked about, I spent 11 years of my career right here at MSTC, late 80s, early 90s. Did look a lot different. In fact, a good dear friend of mine, I'm standing right about where his desk was, former basketball coach, Jeff Kaminsky's office was right here. It looks, I've talked to him, this looks a lot nicer than he was here.
You used to
But-
have to walk outside between the buildings.
Yeah, through the wind tunnel. But I can remember being in the district office, I had a chance to work for Dr. Mel Schneeberg as the district president, sitting around the district board office and saying, how can we get everybody to cooperate because it's 2-year versus 4-year, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. And I'm just personally proud at how the technical college system and the UW system, both private and public, have come together and said, this is student first. I know the high schools always have understood that, but again, fighting that, well, you have to get a 4-year degree or you have to get a 2-year and all that. And I'm just proud to hear you talk about that, Senator, on how things have changed and how they're moving forward. With that being said, it's now time to hear from our audience. If you have any questions, you can ask them from there. I will repeat them and then we will get it. Oh, you have a mic. Go right ahead. Angel, I'm sorry.
Test. Ray Bossert, Village Administrator for Port Edwards. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking time. Two comments, one question, concern. And I appreciate you hitting on it. It amazes me that we, as a legislature, hasn't challenged the legality of our governor commandeering millions of dollars, totally bypassing the budgetary process, the constitutional process, and basically creating a slush fund of all this federal money that he is just, sending out to pet projects. It amazes me that we're letting him get away with that, because that could be done. It could be more impactful, pushed down through the regular process immediately, rather than a pet project, a governor's check that he signs. He doesn't have a checkbook. It's the people's checkbook, managed by you guys that we elect. So that's comment one. Comment two. The concern I have, and of all due respect, the whole gavel in, gavel out you all did last week on a very critical product, that process, a question, what to do with the surplus. Honestly, it's very petty and childish. It's just me. And again, all due respect. That was a pertinent topic that needed to be addressed. You had a submission from a governor that threw something at the legislature with a recommendation of what to do. And rather than discuss it and throw something back, and then we can look at products and compare products, we're now going down a path of talking about the process of this gavel in, gavel out. So I think we just need to who's the adult in the room? And one of you guys, one side needs to be the adult and take the higher ground, and let's talk about the product, because that's the more impactful thing that we all need to do. My concern, the federal money that's coming down for the state roads, for the roads in general. So great idea from Biden on down, great talking points. Millions, trillions of dollars are going to come down, you're going to fix your road networks, blah, blah, blah. Got it. As it trickles down, as we're quickly finding out, the bureaucracy has just taken over. And sadly, where we at this local level, from villages, towns, cities, we're now struggling with trying to answer what our Wisconsin DOT and state have created of massive amounts of bureaucratic layers. That the reality is, more than half of that money, we're not going to be able to touch. Day one they opened it, day one I had 8 projects shovel ready submitted to the DOT. Immediately came back with, oh, they're not roads that are acceptable. They're acceptable to my damn people. My people want them done. So who are you? So that was one thing. Secondly, oh, wait a minute, they need engineering work done. We're just doing resurfacing, resealing, projects that we've done for years. I don't need an engineer to tell me that. I don't need to pay thousands of dollars for that. But no, because it's DOT and federal money, you need to hire an engineer. Oh, then it needs to be selected by us in Madison, who's going to conduct the work. So all the good serving folks here of businesses that we have been working with year after year, have been vetted, credentialed and everything, we now have to wait for a Madison bureaucrat, and even worse, a bureaucratic engineer, to tell me, no, we're going to give this bid to this Schmid lab down here in Milwaukee, and oh, by the way, it eventually may be the same guy, but guess what? How many layers of money we're going to have to pay for that? Totally ridiculous. So it's just sad that a great idea that would directly impact our citizens has been morphed into a nonsense, bureaucratic craziness that we're going to basically say, you know what, even if it's 80, 90% money, thanks but no thanks. We'll just keep going the way we're going to go. So, any comments?
When you touch on the benevolence of the federal government, it's never benevolent, right? I mean, those are issues that we face at the state level every day. When every single one of those dollars come down, whether it's ARPA, CARES, transportation money, everything that has to do with it, there are so many other federal laws that the state DOT can't get away from. Prevailing wage laws. That is the biggest problem you have right now with those dollars getting put into local projects or federal prevailing wage laws. So when the federal government just throws money at the problem instead of looking at the policy that they've created along with the money, that's what's going to cause that bureaucratic red tape every day, every project that we've ever talked about. When it comes down to ARPA, special session money, gaveling in, gaveling out, it's all the same conversation, right? Nobody is more special than the taxpayer and a legislative process where a bill comes to the legislature, gets a public hearing, goes to executive session, then comes to the floor. The governor does not get to rule by fiat and say, legislature, you're coming in tomorrow and passing my bill. It's never going to happen. It didn't happen under Walker. It's not going to happen under Evers. We take those bills, pull them out of special session, put them into the regular process so we can have public hearings and actually debate them. You'll never see us pass a bill without a hearing on the floor of the state assembly while I'm there, and probably not in the Senate as long as Senator Testin's there. But I appreciate the comments, though.
A lot to unpack there. As it relates to oversight of the federal dollars that came in, I agree with you 100%. That's why earlier this session, when the first round of ARPA dollars came into the state, the legislature, we proposed 13 bills as to how we would like to see that money allocated, whether it's dealing with broadband, whether it's dealing for local transportation aids. All 13, again, unfortunately got vetoed. As it relates to the special session, so kind of to piggyback off what Representative Krug mentioned, it's also about the process that didn't go through the proper process. Now, special session the governor can call and the legislature is not compelled to act. Extraordinary session is when the legislature calls that and then both houses agree to come back and then we can take up a specific item. But keep in mind what the governor proposed in his special session to spend down the projected surplus. Now, keep in mind, that is a projected surplus. One of the concerns that we had in the legislature is that, one, the governor continues to push this narrative that we need to spend general purpose revenue. So he wanted to spend about half of the projected surplus, which ultimately would have gotten eaten up entirely because of the maintenance of effort put in place by Congress. Yeah, and the other half inflation. And that's the other thing. It's a cautionary tale right now that we are, while right now things look great for us moving forward, when you've got 40 high year inflation, the consumer price index is pushing 7.9%. I mean, that's going to get eaten up potentially real quick as we see the price of oil approaching $130 a barrel, and we're staring down the barrel of $4.50 per gallon, maybe $5 per gallon by the end of the next couple months. We've got to be very cautious with that. And so that's one of the primary reasons why we didn't act on the special session, because our concern is we should sit on that money for right now, see where the revenues are at come summer, and then re-examine moving forward, because we do not want to put ourselves in a position where, regardless of what happens in November with the governor's election and the legislative elections, that if we have to come back at the end of 2022 or early 2023 to pass a budget repair bill, well then heads are going to start rolling, and then people are going to be seeing significant cuts, which we are trying to avoid right now.
Thank you. We have time for a question or two. Any other questions from, oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm David Farmer. I'm a local realtor in Wisconsin Rapids. I have a question about the viability of getting the Rapids paper mill up and running again. Now, we know that when a mill idles, there's certain things that have to be kept going mechanically to mean that it doesn't just fall into a state of torpor and be completely unrecoverable. I know there are some of those systems which are still going, but there will be some which probably can't be recovered. There's also a problem with the workforce. The workforce has dissipated. We've got probably 90% of the people who were laid off when the mill closed who've now found other work or who have retired. And the third problem I see is with the demand for paper. So Verso would have taken their customers with them. Billerud will presumably have their own customers, and even if they were to sell the mill, they're not going to pass on any customers to whoever buys the mill. Even when the mill was running, one of the problems it had was lack of demand, and stock was building up in the warehouses. So whilst I like to be optimistic, and I'd love it if the mill was up and running at full force, how realistic is it to get it running, even at 50% of the capacity it was before the closure?
So it's a great question, and that, when I talk about the 30,000 foot view, where having a new owner just opening the mill is going to solve all our problems, there is so much work that's gone on behind that to say, okay, this is what has always been produced here. What has been produced here will never be produced here again. That's just the way of the industry, the way of consumers. Every product that you can conceive of that has come through that mill probably is never going to be in demand in this area anymore. So that's why the new ownership groups that have come through have new ideas for different products, different consumers, different groups that have already committed to being customers of theirs for different products. The demand for paper is not ebbing at all. Even the quality of stock that had been produced here, the markets for those have rapidly increased over the last year and a half already. But the new products that are coming out, the things that are produced, say in Beerin, where it's food packaging grade paper products, all of the changes that have been made in the paper industry, where the death of plastic has regenerated paper, is going to be something that new owners can look towards. The existing machinery in there, it's going to take probably another $500 million at some point to reinstall machinery of a different type and a different process. But I think any new ownership group that comes in that knows that they can be secured in getting help for the purchase will make an investment in machinery. Old machinery is not going to make the types of paper they need to make anymore either. So it's going to be a reinvigoration of what's already there. The craft mill is probably the most usable part of that mill that remains. Converting is also a huge part that a lot of mills don't have that'll source converting towards us. That production side of it is something that'll be entirely different than we've ever imagined before. So that's what gives me hope that a new ownership will come in with different products, different customers, and different machines.
Thank you. Time for one more. Go right ahead, sir.
Hello. So my question and concern is, I respect the history of the paper industry and what it's done for our state, and put us on the main stage. Why are we so fixated on paper in general? Why can't we look at different alternatives to using those buildings? Since what's the name of the company that's buying it? They don't want to necessarily start making paper in Wisconsin Rapids, and like this gentleman said, it's going to be difficult to find people to buy it. And my suggestion would be, why can't we turn the craft mill into, say, a facility similar to Herc out in the Twin Cities, where they burn garbage. Now, I've worked for a cleaning company that went into the Herc and cleaned. They do a good job of following EPA regulations and keeping air clean. But by burning the garbage, they're limiting the amount of garbage in the landfills, and then they're using it to help power the cities. And then, say, the other buildings we could use as maybe state-of-the-art, we can make some state-of-the-art recycling facilities instead of sending our plastic and our recycling over to China, or the gigantic island that's almost the size of Texas floating in the Pacific Ocean that we've been continually contributing to over the decades. Why don't we keep all that here? We have a great workforce. I don't want to think that our workforce has shrunk here in central Wisconsin, but us young people, we grew up recycling, and we grew up learning about recycling. I think that recycling and making power, it would be a lot more beneficial. And honestly, as a taxpayer, I don't want to spend $500 million to regenerate a paper mill that my grandchildren are going to end up paying for. So your
All right,
thoughts?
so yeah, no, I get the question. So the idea of repurposing this for paper and supporting the paper industry is not just a Wisconsin Rapids idea. There are literally tens of thousands of jobs throughout the entirety of the state of Wisconsin that depend on our mill being operational, on craft. I mean, our entire forestry industry depends on our ability to process trees. Our entire tax structure for our counties and our the managed forest law program depend on our ability to cut those forests and maintain healthy forests. Our entire tourist industry depends on healthy forests and good revenues for our counties to be able to support programs that'll bring people to the Northwoods to snowmobile and support taverns and bars and restaurants. So when we talk just about the 1,000 people that had worked at Verso, which will never be 1,000 people again. I mean, most likely 300 to 400 because of automation, new products, new machines. We have the workforce. The workforce is here. The workforce is clamoring to come back out of those doors at Domtar and ND and wherever else and come back to work where their grandpas and grandmas used to work, where their uncles and aunts have always worked. People want to walk back in through those doors and work again. People throughout the entirety of the Northwoods are depending on us to get trees processed through Wisconsin Rapids. Even if we never produce an ounce of paper through the production plant again, that craft mill is absolutely essential to the entirety of the Wisconsin state economy. So when it comes down to letting the mill go into something else, if at some point we have to have that conversation, we still have to find a way to reintegrate the forestry markets into being processed in Wisconsin. Otherwise, those timbers are going to go to Canada and other parts of the country. We're going to lose out on revenue. We're going to lose out on tourists. We're going to lose out on so many other opportunities. That mill is way more important to the rest of the state of Wisconsin than it is even here to Wisconsin Rapids. So,
Thank you, and I want to thank all of you for your attendance this morning. Especially want to thank Domtar, Enbridge, Midstate Technical College, and Ocean Spray. Make sure there's a couple flyers in the back. There's some upcoming events from the heart of Wisconsin. There's a breakfast coming up, coffee and everything. Let's give everyone that is an elected official, either seeking office or currently in office, a round of applause. Whether that be federal, state, local, municipality, etc. We all know how hard those jobs are, and we thank you for taking on that task, and because that is not easy. And I know you deal with a lot of questions and a lot of issues. So on behalf of the Heart of Wisconsin Chamber, we thank you for being here. And we'll see you in the fall, and have a great day. And again, thanks to MSTC for hosting in our gorgeous facility. And thank you.